Depending on how long the render is going to take, I try to either queue it up using Adobe Media Encoder so that I can do more editing in parallel while the video is rendering, or I have it export overnight so it's only hogging system resources when I'm not using it. Now, once the video render is complete, you're going to want to watch back the video once more in its entirety to ensure there are no remaining issues you missed when editing, as well as no new issues introduced during the rendering process. Now, during this quality control pass of the video, I try to make efficient use of this time by writing down the timestamps of the major concepts and topics I discuss. This is going to come in handy later. As soon as I've addressed all the major issues, omissions, or mistakes at this point, I ship it. I try not to dwell on it, I try not to make it perfect. It's never going to be perfect. One of the most meaningful ideas that I've ever learned way back when I first started software engineering was the idea that you shouldn't let perfect be the enemy of good. Nothing I've ever put out into the world has felt done or finished or perfect when I ship it. It never will. So you just need to accept it. It took a long time, but I'm finally there. Because it sucks up my internet bandwidth, lags any online video games I might be playing or similar, I try to upload my videos to YouTube either when I'm out of the house or overnight. If I finish an edit right before lunch, I'll have it rendering while I go out to grab food. More often than not, I'm ending my workday after midnight after the video has begun the process of rendering or being uploaded to YouTube. But if not, then I try to make use of this time where some of my system or network resources are being eaten by whatever process is happening in the background, and take this time to finalize as much as the metadata as possible. Now, I almost always start with the thumbnail because this is the part that takes the most time for me. I'm still experimenting, learning, and trying to absorb as much as I can when it comes to YouTube thumbnails. It's like trying to shoot a moving target while out of the window of a moving vehicle, both constantly changing speeds, and every day the gun I'm using is slightly more or less powerful than the day before. Maybe one day I'll get there, who knows. What I try to be mindful of are the following ideas: consistency with my message, related content, my brand, and the tone of the video. I try to pay attention to contrast, clarity, and spacing in these designs. These images are going to be seen all over the place at different sizes and resolutions, whether it's in a Discord message or a retweet, in someone's subscriber feed, or in a recommended video on a mobile phone. While I'm editing the thumbnail, I find it particularly helpful to zoom way out to double check that it maintains its coherence even when it's really small. Now, more than once, I've made the mistake of putting important or relevant bits of visual content in the thumbnail in the lower right-hand corner, leading to that part being obscured by the little video duration box that YouTube puts over it, ruining the whole aesthetic. And when it comes to thumbnails, or honestly any other content I'm creating, I try to seek inspiration from what I personally enjoy. Most original things we create are just smatterings of all the non-original shit that we've consumed, consciously or subconsciously. I try to pay homage to my inspirations, give credit where credit is due, and also try to make everything my own. I've done this with varying degrees of success throughout my short time as a content creator. None of us are perfect, but the best we can do is be honest and mindful. Now, many times I found myself in a design rut where I just want something fresh and new to work with. I personally don't stay in these ruts for very long, and I know lots of folks struggle with this often, so allow me to recommend a few different tips and tricks that have worked for me to break out of these creative ruts. First, I take a look through all of the things I love. All sorts of things. Album covers, infographics, movie posters, architecture, other YouTube videos. I take notes, I borrow elements that stick out to me, and try to pay attention to details, the subtleties that I might not have been aware of before. I try to pay attention to the design of everyday things around me and make note of what elements stick out, both good and bad. Again, I try to pay homage to my inspirations, give credit where credit is due, and make everything my own. I'll very often take a single discrete element from something I like, maybe a chord progression from a song, a color palette from some aesthetically pleasing advertisement, or the way a particular scene in a movie was shot, staged, or lit. I'll steal it and then make something totally fresh based on that one idea. Hell, as most of you guys know, I've even gone full-blown Weird Al and leaned fully into a parody of something. All I'll say is that I would recommend that you educate yourself on some of the basics surrounding fair use and copyright law before you get too inspired by something that you see. Moving on to the next tip, something that's been infinitely fruitful since I've become a content creator is branching out of my comfort zone to study all sorts of other disciplines that are adjacent to digital content creation. Every day I try to learn a little bit about a new topic, and every now and then I lean into it and get sucked down a rabbit hole. Since I've gotten into making video essays, I went from having almost no experience with things like film, architecture, graphic design, or industrial design, to then being interested in learning many of the foundational ideas and experimenting with incorporating bits of each into my content in some way. I try to be a sponge, try to absorb as much as I can from as much as I can. There's too much cool shit to learn and not enough time. So even just being familiar with some basic, often loosely related concepts will make you more of a well-rounded creative. At the moment, thanks to one of my favorite channels, Every Frame a Painting, I've recently been on a kick learning about different aspects of cinematography like blocking, lighting, composing movement, and staging, as well as been trying to teach myself some more general art and design principles like color theory, shading, perspective, and typography, as I've been inspired by content from a channel I recently came across called Ristic Studies. We are extremely lucky that there is an infinite amount of videos on pretty much every subject, from YouTube to masterclasses and websites like Skillshare. Soak it all up while you have the chance. The third tip I have is to have one or more friends or colleagues that you trust and understand to bounce ideas off of and get feedback from. But I will say, caveat emptor. Take it with a grain of salt. Everybody thinks they're an expert. Nobody is. Neither are you. Some folks take this as an opportunity to only point out the negative. They feel that this is where the value comes from in giving feedback. I've been there, and honestly, it's partially true. Other folks aren't confident enough, knowledgeable enough, or honestly care enough to say anything other than, yeah, it looks great. I've also been there, and it's also partially true. Now, the best folks to seek advice from are the right balance of objective and opinionated, knowledgeable and modest, open-minded but stubborn, and honest and tactful. Just assume that everything says is 45% right and filter whatever they say through this lens. Do what feels right to you and try to see as many different perspectives as you can. If you educate yourself and you're honest with yourself, you're probably pretty safe to go with your gut. Finally, I would recommend that you mess around and explore with new menus or features of whatever design software that you've used. Maybe something you've never seen or don't even understand. As long as you make sure to save before you experiment or experiment in a completely fresh project, just in case you totally bork the design, you might find some of your favorite effects by accident even without knowing what you're doing. Learning how to use some of these features and what they do has led to massive improvements in my content that set it apart from what I used to make.